This is Michael McKeon, aka Morris Fletcher, aka Chuck McGill. You know who I am. But it's time for Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent.
You're watching Inside the Gilliverse, talking all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Also brought to you by Idea Bench, makers of hot rod-inspired pedal boards and pedal board accessories at ideabench.com. Microphones for Inside the Gilliverse are brought to you by Rode Microphones. Now, please welcome your host, Eric Broadbent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode 17 of Inside the Gilliverse, where we talk all things Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. My name is Eric Broadbent, and it comes with extreme pleasure to welcome tonight's guest, writer and executive story editor, the lovely and talented Ms. Heather Marion. Heather, how are you?
I am doing good. I'm doing good. I'm hanging in.
That's great. That's good. That's good. Very, very happy to have you. And I know we've had a lot of discussion in the chat over the past little bit, especially having Tom on the show as a co-host. We're having him back soon. People love the insider stuff, and I know, and we're never going to ask you things that you can't answer, and we never ask the writers things, any of the other writers things they can't answer. But the people, the fans here and the viewers just love this stuff. So when I said you're coming on, I said Gordon was coming on, Jennifer's coming on. We're really excited to be able to share some of the behind the scenes stuff. So great to have you here, and I know we're gonna have some great questions from the audience tonight. But how you been keeping busy, and kind of staying focused with all this crazy COVID stuff that's been going on?
I work out a lot. I just finished kickboxing with Luis Moncada, who you may know. He's one of the lovely Salamanca cousins. And his brother Danny joins us sometimes. So I do that. And I've been writing. I'm in a virtual room, and I am working on a couple of things myself. So also trying to stay busy. Good.
You and I were talking off the air, and that's something, so I don't usually do this off the hop, but I mean, it's probably a good thing. We're approaching going on a full year, close to 8 months plus whatever, being kind of cooped up in our homes. For some people like myself, it's no different because I work from home. But the world is a different place, and I think it's good to, recognize, mental health and just, what you're doing too is a physical thing where it's physical activity, and that can also stimulate the mind and keep people, focused. But, just be aware of the stress that everyone is under, and we wish everyone the best going through the rest of this 2020, and hopefully things will start picking up better for everyone in 2021.
Yeah. And staying active. And I was like we were saying before we started, there are many days where I'm tempted to reach for my phone first thing in the morning and just cycle between the news apps. And that's just causing me so much anxiety. It's like, it's best for me to unplug and really seek out the things that I'm interested in, like this show on a Friday night, or looking up Eric Broadbent on YouTube and spending time seeing you lay down some Van Halen presets for line 6. And then I'm just like, whoa, that's amazing. Like, I don't know anything about the guitar, but I spent my whole childhood wanting to look like Kenny G.
Okay.
So when I see like things that bring me joy, it's just, I remember that whatever I focus on grows. So if I can stay in a positive mindset and do things that are making me feel good, making me, happy, then I think we can get through this okay. And, I keep my writer's room toys all around. I think I have one here. This is something we used to have in the Better Call Saul room.
Oh, is that Slinky?
It's kind of a Slinky. It's like an arm Slinky that kind of
that's neat.
Around and,
well, that'll keep the blood flowing too, right? So you're not getting cramped. And yeah, that's cool. I've never seen that.
We had one in our Saul room. So I ordered one at the start of quarantine so I can fiddle around with it.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the very nice words on the guitar playing. I appreciate that.
You know this was going to be show and tell. But here we are.
Who knows, right? No, that's cool. And it's really funny too. One of our mutual friends, I know you've worked with her before, and I love her to death. She's been on the show as Betsy Kellerman, Julianne Emery. I saw a tweet of hers one time. She's like, she likes a good tea. And I saw a tweet one day. She woke up. She goes, but not necessarily the best idea to grab a tea and go on Twitter as first thing in the morning. And sometimes you just see like the political stuff, and it's just like, oh. Come on, let's, no matter what side of the fence you're on, it's just, it's bad on both sides, and just looking forward to a little bit of calmness, right? Who knows? We'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
Here's some good questions coming in already from one of our channel members and our good friends as well too, Arabella. She says, my question is, Kim Wexler's a very complex and intriguing character, and she's become the heart of Better Call Saul. How did you writers decide her development on the show, and what's it like to work with Ray? And I know you've got some great photos with her. I know you're friends. So kind of a double part question.
Yeah, great question, Arabella. Thank you for that. I think I may have seen you on Twitter. Ray Seahorn is every bit as lovely and amazing as you think she is in real life. And the development of her as a character and the process of casting her has been interesting. And I don't know if anyone shared with you on the show, but like when we cast her, I was the person who wrote the casting sides at the time because I was the writer's assistant when we started the show. So when we cast Ray, when we were casting the Kim character, I think we had one script written, but we weren't, we didn't go into the show with a preset idea of like where she would end up and who she would become. We really let the character evolve with us and us with her. And I think when we originally envisioned her, she was more of a straight edge, like rule setting, kind of finger wagging presence in Jimmy's life. So the first scene that we wrote for her to be cast was like, I think she was playing a cop and like she got called to the scene of something that was going down, and she gets there and she realizes that the perpetrator is her sister and she has to sit her down. And it was just like, we watched all of these actresses come through and we're like, they're just not feeling right. And then we got a little further into talking about the episode. Maybe we were in episode 2 at the time. And if you remember in the first episode, Kim doesn't do, a lot. She sees Jimmy in the parking garage and says, I can't do that, Jimmy. So we don't get a good look behind the screen. And just the more we got to know her, the more complicated and complex and interesting she became, and she really has taken over as the heart of the show, and that makes me so happy. And I identify with that character a lot. I grew up in southern Nebraska in a small town on the Kansas border, wishing for more. So a lot of Kim's backstory is my own. My uncle has a funeral home in Red Cloud where you saw Kim standing in the teaser of one of the episodes in season 5.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and we're going to go into another question from our friend Karina, and we're going to talk about dialogue. It's a good question about dialogue, and that's the thing too with Ray. She just owns it when it comes to air and spacing and pausing, at pacing, and sometimes the lack of dialogue. And we're going to get into a question about that as well too. But I didn't know that about that. I didn't know that you wrote some of those parts for that. So that is absolutely fantastic. And it's also very cool to see as well, too, in a show that is technically is a male lead, written about Bob, written about Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman. And yet a woman is really kind of the lead in a way as well, too. So it's good to see her with a strong presence, a good role model for, actors, women getting into film, TV, those kind of things. She's a great role model for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's a good person to look up to on and off screen.
When she was on the show, she was on with Tom and I. She was on my show before Tom started, then she come on with Tom as well too. And before we went live, just like you and I were doing, we're talking for about 5 minutes. We had the best conversation about nearly killing ourselves as kids on 70s furniture. You remember, our parents, I know I'm a lot older than you, but, the 70s were a bad time when it comes to, like safety warnings. Today, nothing would pass safety, cutting our knees and feet on coffee tables. And we could have talked the entire 60 minutes about injuries. It was really funny.
Yeah, we used to have a slide in our backyard that was just made of wood and like a metal sheet. And that was the slide that I remember coming off that thing with my hands full of splinters, and then my dad would be like, well, don't put your hands on it. Like that was the answer. It was not like, let's get a safer slide. It was just like, you're not riding it correctly.
I know.
So yeah, I miss the 80s. Bring them back. We need a little personal responsibility around here.
Did you ever have lawn darts? Remember those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of, yeah. Most of the toys were just designed to kill you. I think it was a lot of parents being like, how can we weed out some of these extra children?
Yeah, I don't like little Bobby over here. Here's a dart, son. Catch. Oh, sorry, it's in your forehead. Yeah. So Karina's question, so we're talking kind of about the dialogue, and this is a really good question as well, too, and this is about one of your episodes, which I loved when we talk about our friends you just mentioned with boxing. She says, is it harder to write a dialogue-free scene and picture how it plays out in your head than a scene with dialogue, such as the epic shootout scene in Talk from season 4 at the motel with the Salamanca brothers and Nacho? And then, we had a question from Maribel asking, working with Ray, what's it like working with the brothers?
Those are great questions, both of those. And both versions of those scenes, one dialogue heavy and one with no dialogue, present their own challenges and take their own amount of time. And I myself am a slow writer. And usually I go through the script and I write mostly action first, and then I go back and fill in the dialogue. I'm thinking of an episode from season 2, the first one that I got to work on the show with. I co-wrote the season 2 finale with Vince, and I remember, having a master class in screenwriting, reading the back half of episode 10 because Vince had written about an 8-page scene in the desert with Mike and the sniper rifle with no dialogue, and it was just chef's kiss. Was so well written, and you're picturing the whole thing, and I referred back to that many times when I was taking a crack at that season 4 episode in the shootout. And we anchored that in Nacho's point of view. So we really tried to stay with him as the character, and like he's walking up on the guy that comes in on the truck and he shoots that guy. That's his first kill. So like, what is the emotion of Nacho that's pulling us through the scene, not just what are we seeing visually in the scene. And 210 was also the first time that I worked with the brothers, with Louis and Danny, and they are so lovely. They're just so funny and so gregarious and so talkative. Like, couldn't be. I was saying Ray is a lot like the loveliness that you see, and the Louis and Danny are not. They're the opposite. It's just like you want to run up and hug them. But
yeah.
When I first met them, being like, oh, I don't know.
It's scary to look. Yeah.
Yeah. They like to get that down and dirty. They were great in 404, and I love working with them every time. I just love writing for them.
What's so funny, I put a post on Twitter. I think it was after the guys were on, and it was a silly, I subscribe. I have a member for the AMC Press to use their photos with permission and stuff, right? So I was going through some of the behind the scenes stuff, and there's one where they're up in a lift. It was, and they had an umbrella because it was either hot or there was weather coming. I don't know what it was, probably heat. And it looked like they were Mary Poppins, up there with an umbrella, right? And they're smiling, whatever. And I posted something like, see, they're not that tough. And then either Daniel or Louis, one of them said, or both of them said, look, man, we're coming for you. We got some street cred to uphold. We can't be saying that we're nice guys, this kind of stuff, right? It was so funny. But here's a question from Nat Romero, and you've kind of already hit it right on the head talking about working with Vince, but I want to ask just to at least mention her. She says, so you co-wrote 210 with Vince Gilligan. How is it to work hand in hand with the boss as your first writing assignment? And also, how does it work? So you kind of touch base on that. And a funny little comment at the end, she says, do you split the index cards and go your separate ways?
That was an interesting experience. Because we were so close to shooting when we wrote 210. I ended up doing the rewrites of 210 with Vince in his kitchen at his place in Albuquerque when we were getting ready for production. And it was so surreal. It was such a dream to be able to work with him. And he really treated me like a colleague, which was incredibly bizarre. I was coming out season 2. I was the writer's assistant and script coordinator. So I had those dual roles, and I wasn't really thinking about writing a script that season. And I had written an extra scene where Price, the character Price that sells the pills.
Yep. Mark Prosh.
Mark Prosh. And there's a scene where Jimmy's talking about how Price sits in pies and he cries, and he was telling the police this cover story, and that Price sells these videos to rich art patrons. And so we actually had that scene written, and Jenny Hutchison, who you're talking to soon, she let me take a crack at that scene, and Vince and Peter really took a shining to it. And I remember Vince saying, would you like to write episode 210 with me, after writing that video? And I was just like, I can't believe this is my life.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, yes, that's my dream. And we had finished breaking the episode, and we split it. I wrote the teaser act 1 and act 2. and Vince went off and wrote 3 and 4, and then we switched it and gave each other notes. I didn't give him any notes. I had no notes. It was perfect. And he had some notes for me, and then I rewrote it, and then we went into shooting in Albuquerque. So it was really amazing.
What a pleasure. And he's so nice. When we talked to him, like I was a little nervous. Like I don't usually fanboy out, and I usually don't get too worked up before a show. But when Vince was on, I was like, okay, now we got Mr. Gilliverse. We have the captain of the ship. And I was like, for a few moments, I was kind of like stepping on my tongue, and trying to get the words out. But he's such a cool guy. He just so relaxed, and he brings the best out in everybody. And I'm sure you guys will all in the writers' room agree with that.
Yeah. And he's the kind of person that I just want to spend my career around. People who are kind and excellent at what they do, and foster growth for the people that are around them. And I think the world of him.
I think if he ever goes to, when a day comes when he wants to retire, who knows when that could be, I think he'd be good to read children's books. I love his voice. Don't you think?
I think he could fly around in helicopters and read children's books, and maybe write a few.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a super chat question from one of our good fans and friends, members of the channel, Shashank Vachari. How does it feel for you, both as a writer and a fan of the show, as you see Jimmy and Kim's relationship getting darker and possibly not ending well? That's a good question.
Yeah, you really hit it there, and I have a lot of feelings about it, and we've talked about it. I mean, I think when we're breaking the story in the room, it's just as much like it's breaking our hearts when we're going in a direction, but we follow the characters where they take us, and they're taking us in this direction, and I'm excited to see where they go for season 6. And an interesting thing about the show is like there are physical stakes for Kim, because we don't know what happens to her down the road. We don't know where she ends up. We know that Jimmy's okay in the future because we've all seen Breaking Bad, and we know that Saul Goodman's around. So the stakes for Jimmy are a man who's losing his soul. And sometimes that can be worse than the stakes of like, is he going to lose his life or not? So on one hand, we're like seeing the devolving of Jimmy and his soul sinking down, and then Kim and he are separating, and it's getting so heartbreaking, and I love it.
Yeah, it is. And that's
some redemption. That's what I'm hoping for.
I love how all of you, and when I say all of you, I mean everybody from Grips to probably catering, everybody in the cast and crew are all fans. Even if it's a cast member who has been killed off or they've left, they're still so devoted to the show, and that's why it's so contagious. Just it makes us believe it. Everyone's such a fan, so I love that. More great questions coming in. This is from Harini. This is a kind of a funny one here as well too. It might put you on the spot a little bit. It says, tell us about something in the show that was heavily debated in the writers' room. Who is someone you disagree with often? And it's probably, if you want to just digress to Tom Schnauz, we're fine with that.
Yes. The honest answer, and I'm not just saying that, is that the room works so cohesively that often at the end of the day, and certainly at the end of the season or the episode, you look back and you can't really remember who came up with what idea and who was on. I don't remember like a knockdown argument about what should happen or not happen. I definitely remember scenes where we struggled to come up with the right way to do it. For example, in 210, the sequence where the horn's honking and Mike goes back and finds the don't note. It took days to figure out how are the mechanics working. We thought about like, is there a remote control car that drives up with a note on it? Like it took a long time to get that sequence right. And there are examples of that from every season. The mechanics of the shootout took a long time to work on. And I love the process of struggling in the room full of people.
Yeah, that's good.
Especially that are so lovely, like they are.
Well, that's something I had a note, and this would be the only thing I'll reference one of my questions tonight, or points for that matter. Even when your name is attached to an episode, when you're assigned to an episode or Tom's assigned to an episode and gets credit for the episode, we always hear the term being used, collaboration, and there's so much from everybody, right? And it's such a team effort. Just one person, fortunately gets their name attached to it and probably writes the bulk of it, of course, but there's so much group effort. And, both with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, the team that just comes together. There's no wonder why it's arguably the best TV out there.
Yeah, and it really is a team effort, and there's no wrong pitch. Often, some of the best pitches are when we are struggling. Like I was just saying, we'll be talking for days and the thing's not coming to us. And then someone will pitch something out of left field. It's like, how's Kim this is not a real situation. Yeah. How's Kim going to get back from the desert? And someone's like, finally, after 3 days, like, what if she rides on a narwhal? And it's like, well, we don't use narwhals in our show. This is a real show. That's not going to work. But the thing that does is it asks us to consider, what if Kim doesn't walk? What if she gets a ride? And then that ends up being the solution to the thing. And like, that was a very important thing to say, even though it wasn't the right thing. So it doesn't do us any good to like judge our contributions, our, how we're doing. Mm-hmm. We all push the ball forward together.
Can you imagine someone just as late to the party here tonight? They're just tuning in just at that very moment. You're saying, yes, when Kim goes out to the desert, and they're thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen to Kim? She's in the desert. Did they take her out there? Blah, blah, blah. But
Kim's in the desert and she comes back on a narwhal.
Here's a question. Now, I'm going to pronounce the name wrong. I'm very familiar with them. Fantastic drawings. One of the best sketch artists I've seen out there, Ragava. And I apologize if I'm saying it wrong, but how would you describe the relationship between Gus and Mike? And that's a great relationship as well, too, a weird one. Is it friendship or is it just professional, especially after what happened with Werner Ziegler and the way he's treating Nacho?
Yeah, that is a great question. Thank you for asking that. And, that's a relationship that doesn't really take leaps. It really is increments. And it happens by Mike comes to Gus time and again and sort of elbows that line back from early on. And it's because, you learn a lot about characters when the things they care about are threatened. And when Mike's family is threatened, he's going out to the desert with a rifle. He's ready to put a bullet through someone's head. And then in an episode in season 3, he goes to Gus with some money and says, I need to have you take care of this money for me because I need my family to get it. Otherwise, if something happens to me, they'll never see it again. And he's asking Gus for a favor, knowing full well that he's throwing in with Gus. And then we fast forward to for example, 505, and he's taken to this place in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. And he learns a lot about Gus and about the commonality they share as, we have usefulness in that we are both seeking revenge. And do I think that Mike is friends with Gus? Not necessarily, but do I think that he respects him and that they have this understanding that's taking them to the same place? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. No, 505, was that your episode, Dedicado a Max? Is that yours? Yeah, that was a fantastic episode. And we talked about this on the show before too. So cool, right? Like I know you're very good friends with Max, the real Max. And we talked about this when he was on the show. Isn't it so cool? And there's been a couple times where characters' names are borrowed from the real world to adopt in the virtual world. Very, very cool for him, though. And then to see that monument as well, too. And then, of course, your title being the pinnacle of that. Such a great episode.
Oh, thank you. And again, there's such a group effort, and as all the episodes are. It felt like that felt like a pivotal episode for the relationship between Gus and Mike, and it was really magical to watch that. We shot that close to Santa Fe, and it was a beautiful location.
And I mean, you're responsible there too for a big turning point in Mike too, because Mike was pretty much he was putting himself in harm's way on purpose. He was getting completely wasted at the bars, would pick a fight, probably almost hoping to die, but just doesn't want to kill himself. And, when you put him in that situation in 505, it was a turning point. And even Gus says you can go back to doing what you're doing, that life that you chose, whatever, or you can do this. And, in a way, Gus saves his life until he meets Walter White, of course.
Yes, Gus is saving his life. And I think for many of these characters, it's a study in self-destruction.
Yeah.
A lot of them do that. Again, going back to Kim in season 3, where she starts to basically work herself to death. And, Chuck has much of the same situation where he's self-destructing. And, it's so interesting to follow these characters down that path. And Mike luckily got saved before he ended up going too far.
Mm-hmm. And we talk about this, with Tom with Bad Choice Road, the titles, things like that. But these choices that these characters in the shows make, it's obviously they're made because you guys and girls write the choices for them. But the characters making these choices, and Kim chooses to work like a workaholic. That's how she succeeded. And a lot of the other actors make these choices. Jimmy doesn't have to get involved with the cartel and stuff like that. He doesn't have to go into the desert to get $7 million. But you make these choices, and once you've made that choice, you've committed to it. You never know what's going to happen. But they're their own ones to blame. But here's a really good question. You and I were talking off the air. We got talking about radio and things like that, and you were saying, and you mentioned already your dad's business, and you did some of the commercials. You would voice the commercials as a young girl. But Lori says, Heather, tell us about when you left your family's funeral home business and you ultimately ended up doing what you're doing now. So that's a big move, Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Somebody has been reading some backstory. But I was studying biochem, and I was pre-med, and was all set to either be a mortician or maybe a pediatric surgeon or something like that. I wasn't sure. But I started getting interested in writing during a semester in New York. I started doing theater, and I made a switch to writing. The only writing job I could find in Nebraska was a journalist for the railroad. So I was still living in my parents' funeral home, but I started picking up some journalism pieces and then traveling around on freight trains to write. And then I knew that my heart was in TV and film, and I wanted to do that kind of writing. So I packed up my Grand Am and I drove out to Los Angeles, and I started interning and went to UCLA and then started assisting. So it was kind of it seems like a big move, but it was a very slow process. It was about, it took about 8 years of assistant work and hard work before I got to meet the people at Better Call Saul.
Wow, what a story for sure. And it's a big story. And our viewers here and friends, I never, ever profess to know it all here. I'm being schooled all the time from them. So I just learned a little bit about that. I didn't even know until tonight that, your dad had the business. So that's very, very cool. And the fact that you were part of it for quite some time. This is from Mrs. Wexler. She's the one that drew the really cool caricature of you today.
Thank you.
She does some good stuff. It was really cute. So she says, so Mike helps in your episode, Mike helps to repair the house while it's raining there and it's leaking on the sill there and everything. Was this scene showing Mike's crafty side? Because he is good. He can pretty much fix anything. He's a MacGyver. Or was it his hidden inner kindness?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. And I think probably it was both. I think it's nice to see Mike working with his hands. We got to see a little bit of the end of him building a carport with his son, Maddie, in season 3 in a flashback. We've seen him build things for Stacy. I think, part of the journey that he had in that town in Mexico was warming to the person that he was staying with and to helping her. And I think that was a connection that he hadn't felt in a long time, just like a friendship, platonic connection with somebody that was important for him. And I think the other element to it was that he was finding a way to be useful again. Mm-hmm. He really felt useful. And then we see, if I'm remembering my own episode correctly, he starts on the window and then he goes out and has that conversation with Gus. And then he comes back and he feels like he's considering what he's going to do, but he's listening to what Gus said about we need to find our purpose, and you could have a purpose. And then I feel like the finishing of that window is like a punctuation on that scene where we're seeing that come to fruition. We don't know what he's decided yet, but maybe we have an idea.
Well, that's good. That's good. And what I love about what you always do, and when I say you, all of you, there's always some humor just sprinkled in to kind of break some tension that might be in the scene. So Mike, he can't speak back and forth or at the breakfast table there or whatever. He can't speak Spanish, and he's trying to have a communication, and he's trying to charge his phone. And I mean, he's doing all this MacGyver stuff to trying to hook up. I think he pulled out a lamp cord and he's hooking it all up, whatever. And she comes in, she goes here, and she hands him the cell phone charger. Was that your idea, or was that a collaborative idea?
I'm sure it was a collaborative idea. I did consult my friend Jeremy Tatro in my hometown to teach me how exactly you would build a phone charger. He's an electrician. Okay. And I have to call back and say that my dad, as a mortician, has helped us with several scenes in the show. He helped with the way that in the first episode where the the guys have broken into the funeral home and had unruly relations with the corpse. My dad helped set up the embalming room, and he also gave us notes on the dead hand that Mike digs up in 308. So I have to just mention that in case my dad's watching. And
isn't that cool?
Yeah, so that scene is so funny, that where Mike's not asking for the charger, because I feel like he probably could get away with not knowing Spanish by just showing her the phone and saying like, charge please, but he's so stubborn, he doesn't want to ask for help, so he goes to this great lengths to try to build the charger, and then she dangles it in front of him, and I think that is a really funny moment.
That was cool. It just breaks the tension for a brief moment, right? That was really good. Nat Romero says, Ray said in an interview that Kim wouldn't use contradictions while speaking for the first 7 to 8 episodes. Do you remember that being discussed in the room? You were a writer's assistant then at the time.
Contradictions?
Yeah, I'm not sure what she means there while speaking for, she wouldn't use contradictions, unless I'm getting this voice to text wrong, whatever. But yeah, contradictions while speaking for the first 7 to 8 episodes. Do you remember that being discussed? So I'm not quite sure. Maybe we can have that question resent to us. I'm not positive on that one. Here's while we wait for that.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah.
From Big Bubbles fan, who is the character for you that is the most challenging?
Wow. Thank you. That's a really good question. Interesting question. I think there are probably a few that take me longer to crack. I think, but they're also a lot of fun. I mean, Mike and Gus are difficult because of how economical they are, and by all of the things that they're saying by not speaking. And really, most of what they say is in their silence. Sometimes it was hard to find the dialogue for them. But that said, it was a lot of fun to write their dialogue too. I really enjoyed having scenes with them, especially together.
For sure. Now, here is a really good one here as well too. Let's see if I can find this one. I just skipped a little too fast. That was, this is perfect. So here's one from Nat again. This one you can answer for sure. She says, okay, can we please talk about Kevin Wachtell and impersonation was taking a bath the only option on the table?
That was, I could probably venture to say that was a Tom pitch, to have them go shower together at the end.
Okay.
That scene, maybe. I mean, maybe it wasn't. Maybe we came to it together, but it seems like something Tom would have come up with. That scene was so fun. It was so fun to write. It was so fun to watch. It was like something that Ray and Bob rehearsed and just really brought to another level when we were on set. I remember a day in the writers' room where somebody said, statues. And I think that was a light bulb moment where we all looked at each other and were like, Ray has to do that. Ray has to impersonate Kevin in a scene with Bob. And, the side sitting thing, that was something that Rex Lynn, as an actor, who I adore Rex Lynn, good friends with him, but he does that side sitting all on his own. So
okay.
I think in watching back the character and some of the scenes from him, we're like, God, Rex always does sit off to the side. Maybe Kim should mention his side sitting too. So that scene just really came together in a fun way.
A little bit of a way to roast him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, in a friendly way.
Yeah. We get to the end of the scene and we're like, so is Kevin asking Kim to go take a shower, or it's fun. Let's do it.
So here's a follow-up to that question from Nat. So maybe this makes more sense. She was taking no contractions. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that does make sense. So that's not something that we discussed, although we did discuss the fact that Kim is very buttoned up and she's very proper, and it takes her, as she said, 7 or 8 episodes. So it probably did take her that long to kind of relax into her own. And maybe when she was working for HHM, she wouldn't speak in any contractions. And then when she got out to Wexler McGill, she let her hair down a little. And she did actually let her hair down. We started to style her hair differently.
Yeah.
So
and
she relaxed a little.
It makes a big difference for sure. You can feel it. You totally feel it. I think there's actually like Kim Wexler ponytail and things like that out there on social media handles out there. It's funny. Here's a good one from Shawshank. He has great questions as well too. A super chat says, and something that we're all looking forward to see what happens to Gene, obviously, in season 6. But how do the writers approach writing the gene timeline at the beginning of each new season?
That's a great question. We do spend some time at the top of each season, kind of what we call blue sky. And we have a board, at the back of the room with all of the episodes, and we kind of put some cards up there. And we spend some time talking early on about what those gene scenes might be. And as the seasons progressed, it became more obvious to us that storyline was becoming more substantial. So we definitely spent more time talking about it. We didn't have plans at the beginning of the show for it to be, anything in particular. It started with the one scene, and we just, we committed to that scene, and we were careful not to overcommit to a storyline that we would have to play out if we didn't want to, but we followed it, and it became something that we could expand on. So it's something exciting and maybe something to look forward to in the future. Nice.
And I mean, fingers crossed with with being 13 episodes, there's a lot of people the fan theories are fantastic. Maybe we'll see a full Gene episode. And I think I pitched that question either myself or on behalf of a viewer last time we had Gordon on the show, and I think he kind of alluded to it. They might be looking at possibly a full. I don't want to quote that he did say that. I think he said that. Sometimes I have to go back and watch my own shows after because I'm trying to focus on technical problems that could go wrong, and sometimes I forget what's even being said. Right, but that'd be cool. We're looking forward to that.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I'd like that too.
Teresa says, "Love listening to you, Heather. You are just fabulous." So a nice compliment.
Thank you, Teresa.
Now, this person's name, I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I know him as a regular, but Fedesite. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. How did you get to work on the show, and what would you recommend to a new screenwriter? Thanks for everything.
Oh, I love that question. I really do love that question. And I try to, answer it as much as possible. So I started, like I said, I when I first came out, I was an intern. I looked for an internship that I thought fit me well. And that I specifically targeted a producer named Laura Ziskin. And it really is what you might hear. It's just work really hard, stay in your feet, be generous, give other assistants opportunities. So I learned script coverage well, and I, helped out the other assistants as best I could. And from there, I got a job as an assistant to a showrunner. I worked for that person for 1.5 years. And then I worked for a producer comedian named Jeff Garland for 4.5 years. And I was with him on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and then the Goldbergs. And I worked on a movie with him. And I was as an associate producer, and Bob Odenkirk was the star in that movie. So I got to know Bob pretty well. I also was getting my master's at UCLA. So a few, I would say keep a lot of irons in the fire along the way, and, keep your eyes on the prize, because things fall into place if you keep working hard. So I heard about the opportunity for Better Call Saul, that it was starting up, and I kind of threw all my weight in that direction because I had such respect for the filmmakers involved and for the material. And so, I asked people for recommendations, and I reached out to my old employers, and for the first time said, could you help me? Could you send an email to maybe help me get a chance to be on the show? So I got an interview and started as a writer's assistant, but many years of working and assisting, and also keeping writing my own material, even when no one was paying me for it.
Good. Yeah. Keeping the chops up, right?
Yeah.
It's like anything. If you're a painter or a guitar player like myself, if you're maybe not making money at it, keep doing it. You got to keep those chops fresh. Yeah.
Keep fostering other people doing it too. Read other people's work and try to be as generous as you can.
Yeah. I saw a good post the other day from, I'm not sure if you're friends with them. I know some of the cast and crew are. Glenn Mazzara is a good friend of mine. And I know he's done some of the Writers Guild panels. He did it with a bunch of the staff there back in it was a Breaking Bad writers panel. But I saw a tweet from him the other day, and not too many writers do this. He was accepting scripts. And for most people, contractual reasons, they can't accept scripts, for legalities and things like that. But he was reviewing scripts. And it was nice to see, some people were chewing him a new butt because he was giving some tough love, right, on some of these scripts. And, you can't sugarcoat some things. You can't blow smoke up people's butts and say you're going to be great if you're not. But it was nice to see someone of that caliber, of his writing caliber, to take on some things like that and give some advice. So the more you can do for people like that, the better. It's nice.
Yeah, he's always been super amazing and accessible. And so, I love the honesty and just how real he is. And it feels like he won't steer you wrong. And I remember I also teach at San Francisco State and Boise State at drama development. And I actually used some of Glenn Mazzara's some notes that I took while he was giving one of his panels at the Guild. And he was also there when I did my staff immersion workshop at the WGA. And he said so many great things that I was writing down that I could then pass along to my students. So he hasn't just helped the people that he's seen directly. He has really he has an umbrella effect, which, you never know who you're going to help by opening yourself up to helping people.
Yeah, I love him a lot. It's funny because my son at the time, he was probably about, I'm going to say between 5 and 8 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. And he was playing the Walking Dead theme on his keyboard, just learned how to play it. And both Glenn, because I was friends with Glenn at the time, still am, but him and Bear McCreary had commented and said how Junior was doing this really good. So Junior's having a bath. It's almost bedtime. He's having a bath. And Glenn calls me at home and says, "Can I speak to Eric?" And he actually asked to speak to Eric, and I put the speakerphone because he's in the tub. And he's like, just tell him how great of a job he did. And I was like, that is beyond cool. To call and talk to a young kid to tell him how well he did on the thing. But I as you were talking, I just reached under the desk and I grabbed this because it was right here. I've got a signed script from Damien from Glenn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
under that.
I was really wishing that would have got picked up for a second season. It didn't, but that was a great piece.
Yeah.
So here's some more great questions coming through. Now, this is a good question from both Lori and from Karina. And we did touch base a little bit on, characters being difficult to write for. So there's kind of a difficulty and a happiness here. So Lori says, which characters have been the most difficult to write on Better Call Saul so far? And Karina says, do you have a favorite character to write for? Mike's dialogue really stood out, and you write a lot for Mike. So difficulty, and then on the flip side of that, wow, I love writing for this person.
Yeah, and I think I tried to touch on that a little bit earlier, but I think Mike is both difficult and such a joy. I don't, that's another thing I recommend to people, don't shy away from scenes that are difficult because they often become the most fulfilling scenes that you'll write. And when you get to the heart of them, and usually when they're difficult, it's because you just haven't tapped into what is supposed to be there yet, or I'm having trouble listening to the character. I have trouble listening to Mike because he doesn't talk very much. So sometimes I have to spend more time with him to hear what he's saying. And there are a lot of characters, that have, I guess, lesser roles that have been so fun to work for and to write for. The Sklar brothers, who played, they were the music store owners in episode 308. They had some back and forth where they were kind of interrupting and haggling with Jimmy over the commercial that Jimmy was trying to play. That scene was just so much fun to write. And as a side note, I've worked with a lot of identical looking siblings on this show. Dan and Steve, who were the skateboarding twins.
Yes.
Were there. Lewis and Danny, who are not twins, but they look a lot alike, and play the Salamanca brothers. And then the Sklar brothers, who were the music store owners. And then I had triplets in my episode 505. 3 little girls that were standing under the crying Jesus, the weeping Jesus at Acker's house.
Oh, right.
So it just dawned on me as I'm talking to you that there are a lot of identical looking siblings that I've been able to.
Isn't that crazy? Wow. Yeah. Here's a question again. Now, I pronounced the name wrong before, so I'm just going to say Fed. I think it's Fedicite, but I'm going to say Fed. And this is probably something you're just going to have to comment on as a fan of the show. Are we going to find out what happens in Chile with Gus? And that's something as well too. I've asked this question, not that question, but we want to know what happens to Gene, and that kind of thing. And sometimes we don't, Kim's backstory. We get to see a little bit of that, obviously, with her, having an alcoholic mom, and she played cello as a child, and that's about it. You don't get to see too much, and sometimes not knowing the whole story can really make the story more intense. And I think that's a question a lot of people want to know is, everyone says, well, we know what you did in Chile, Gustavo. So that'd be, as a fan, would you like to see that?
I would love to see that. And I'm actually not going back to write for season 6. I'm developing now. So I could truly speak as a fan and say, I would love to see that. I would love to see more about Kim. But then at the same time, I can think back to other things that I've wanted to see on shows in the past. And it's like, when I get all of my questions answered, it's not always the most satisfying outcome, like, because maybe I want something different for the characters. So I really think that there's value to leaving us with some questions at the end. And I know that we're in capable hands with Vince and Peter.
That's awesome. Here's another good one from Karina as well too, and it's funny too. My better half Sandra Lee, I got to give her props. She's trying so hard. Voice to text is not cooperating with her tonight.
Great.
But at least I'm waiting for the final one before I do a Ron Burgundy here. And this is from Karina. Says, did you come up with the commercial with the old folks saying, "Gimme Jimmy, gimme Jimmy," and click?
Again, that was a group effort, and I remember early on in season 1, we we as writers, we have to take breaks. We can't just write and break story the whole day. But once in a while, we'll gather around someone's laptop and watch Tim and Eric videos, and we would see their old their Prices commercial and some of those old commercials. And then we were thinking one day, like, what if Jimmy made these commercials and they were kind of like the low quality sort of budget, maybe he gets some students to help him. And then we all took cracks at coming up with different commercials. And I believe the one that we saw in episode 210, we saw that for the first time. That ended up being kind of an amalgamation of several ideas that we had come up with. But I did get to, I got to write that commercial for the first time that played in 210, and how much fun it was to work on that.
Well, there it goes back again too. I mean, I'm sure you weren't thinking of it at the time, but maybe it goes back to your radio days again. Doing those commercials for your dad's for the funeral home. You had a little bit of experience. You know how the ads go and how much time you've got. A 15-second or a 30-second or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, it's fun to work on that kind of mind again, the journalism and the timed and the let's make something that's exactly 60 seconds. We got a spot to do. So it was fun to work on those muscles. And it's also fun just to a lot of the job is just saying what if this happens? What if he makes commercials and they look crazy? And what kind of ideas can we come up with? And sometimes those land.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. What if can be a really good thing and maybe a scary thing sometimes too. Karina says, on that first episode that you co-wrote with Vince, click, who came up with Chuck not telling Jimmy about their mom asking for Jimmy right before she died? That was the most heartbreaking thing. And I think too, if Jimmy would have known, it certainly wouldn't have changed him. He's made his choices to do what he's going to do. But I mean, that's such a thing to not know, that your mom asked for you. Did she say anything? Nope, nothing. So whose idea was that?
Man, I really wish that I kind of wish and don't wish, but we keep notes. The writer's assistant keeps notes, and we don't do there's no initials that say who came up with what ideas. It really is. It's a report at the end of the day of what everyone said. So I don't know who came up with it. Probably a bunch of us together saying maybe this, maybe this, and we came into it together. But yeah, that was a really heartbreaking moment. And throughout the series, you see sort of this push-pull of some moments that really warm us to the relationship between Chuck and Jimmy. And then we see others that fracture them more. And that was definitely one of the fracturing moments where you're like, I don't know if I can forgive Chuck for doing this. And then later we see him, singing karaoke with his brother. And you're like, oh, there's that too. But yeah, that was such a gut-wrenching moment. And that was the first scene that I wrote for the show. So that has a special place in my heart.
You can imagine, right? Put yourself in his shoes. You lose a family member, a parent. We all think our parents are immortal. I've lost both my parents, so they're long gone. It takes a while to get over that. But the fact that maybe they said something real nice about you, or they even asked about you, before they passed, yeah, that's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
for sure. Another good question.
The scene too.
Yeah. This is from Mrs. Ignacio Varga. Do you have a favorite scene or episode that you've been involved in writing? That's a tough one. That's like picking a favorite niece or nephew or a child or guitar, but.
Yeah, it is. I'm glad you said I have some nieces and nephews.
I know. I see them on your Instagram. You're really proud.
I am. I'm such a proud auntie. Yeah, there are scenes that stand out from episodes, but I just don't know. Like I just said about that first scene that I ever wrote for the show was the teaser of 210. And so that's always going to stay with me. It was really new and exciting for me to write the shootout in 404, the first draft of that. I hadn't written anything like that. It was a lot of fun to write the dialogue between Jimmy and the community service supervisor at the end of episode 308, just because it was so like, that's the first time that we really let Slip and Jimmy loose, and he just really went for it. So it was fun to write that. And some of my favorite scenes to write have been the Gus Mike scenes, in 308 and 505.
Fantastic. And it's nice when you see the Slip and Jimmy getting his little, the start of that, right?
Yeah, it was fun to see the genesis of that.
I know.
And then go back to, the teaser of 308. I think 308, I'm remembering right, was the when we see Jimmy and Marco in Cicero, and they're coming into their dad's corner store, and they're going to be hustling for coins. So to see some of that, like, here's the evolution of Slip and Jimmy as we now know him, and later Saul Goodman. Like, it's fun to start putting some of those pieces together.
That's right. A very good question from Michelle. She says, I see you're from Nebraska, and so is Kim Wexler. Is this a coincidence, or did this come from you?
I don't think it was my idea to make her story like mine, but it is. We did model her pieces of her story after some of the things from my history. Like, I am from a town on the Kansas-Nebraska border. I may have ended up marrying the guy that ran the grocery store if I didn't get out to get more. Yeah. I am a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and you do see Kim there. And like I mentioned earlier, my uncle has a funeral home in Red Cloud, Nebraska, where you see that's where Kim grew up. So that's about 30 miles from my hometown. So there's a lot of commonalities, and it's fun to write some of Kim. She has that diction and that kind of Midwestern flair that I know pretty well. Sweet.
And never set your sights low. Aim for the stars, right? And just
might fall on the moon. Who knows?
That's right. This is the last question for the evening, and this is one from Lisa. And some of these questions they're all fantastic and things I never would have thought of in a million years. Actually, I'm gonna sneak one of my last ones in for myself. But Lisa says, "Is all of Kim's teeth brushing moments symbolic?"
Maybe Peter has a different answer for this, and maybe you're going to have him on and he'll say something. I think that they're a lot of fun. I love when we are seeing people's fingers getting stuck in their mouths and sharing. So that's fun. I feel like it's symbolic of their growing relationship and keying us up to being even more heartbroken when we see where they're going to end up. Like, I don't know how much teeth brushing is left for them in the future. Maybe we're going to see them in the Midwest brushing their teeth together. That would be lovely.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? That would be great. And Peter is coming back on, actually. We're looking forward to having him back. That's going to be great. The last time we had him on, we surprised him with a crash, a party crash from Bob Odenkirk. He popped on himself and totally threw Peter off. He didn't know he was coming. And I was speaking with Joanna, Peter's assistant, for about a week and a half in advance. And we kept it a secret. Peter had no idea. And we were going to be using Skype for our connection. So we were all planned on Skype. And then we needed to do Zoom because Bob needed Zoom to come into the meeting. So we changed last minute. And so she tells Peter, there's been a change in plans. You have to use Zoom now. And so everything's going to be good, blah, blah, blah. And then Bob popped in. It was really fun. So the last question I have, I like to give the fans more questions than me. So I'm just going to give you one last one. And here again, this is a fan, yourself being a fan, looking ahead. The last we saw of, Kim and Jimmy, kind of planning some maybe deserved, maybe not so deserved revenge on Howard. Do you think Howard is deserving of what might be coming his way?
I have, thank you for asking that. I have so much trouble separating Hamlin from Patrick Fabian. And Patrick is like just one of the best people that I know. Like, he's so wonderful. I don't think Patrick deserves anything bad to happen to him, and therefore I think Hamlin has paid his price. But that being said, it's always fun to see him under the ringer a little bit, and I liked seeing Jimmy heaving bowling balls. So either way, I'm going to be happy as long as Patrick is fine.
And I love Patrick. He's great. He's such a great guy. And, you can see two sides to that argument, right? Okay. Yeah. He's sometimes a jerk, but he's not, and I'm talking about Howard, not Patrick, so it's going to be really interesting to see. And there's a lot of arcs that need to be tied up. Maybe some will just be kind of swept under the rug. Not that the writers ever do that. Who knows? But there's a lot of stories that are coming to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll wait for the next spinoff.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, we're just going to wrap up here in a moment. I'll say some thanks again to some of the people that helped make this show possible. But first of all, I want to thank you. This has been a great 60 minutes. I've been looking forward to this all week. And it was funny, last night I was checking out some of the videos or some of the posts on your Instagram, and I saw that you did some of the workouts with Louis and Daniel. And I promised you on Twitter today, I said, I promise not to piss you off because you would easily kick my ass. So I hope you had fun tonight. In other words, I don't want you coming after me. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. So I want to say thank you again to all of our Patreon members, our channel members, our Patreon supporters, channel moderators, Mark and Sandra Lee in the chat. Thank you so very much. Our subscribers, our super chatters, PayPal donators, and all those people that buy our stuff through the Broadstash Boutique. Broadstash.com. We thank you so very much. And we talked about the brothers several times tonight. They're going to be back here next Friday night, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we're going to do nothing on the iPad, nothing scripted. It's going to be all for the fan questions. So bring your questions. You can ask multiple questions from each person. We'll do our very, very best to ask each and every one of them. And check out later on tonight. I'm a little bit behind on the audio podcast. I've got to get Gordon's up. I've also got to get James Austin Johnson's podcast up, and we'll be getting Heather's up tonight as well too. So I got 3 audio podcasts to put. So wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google, any of those places like that, we'll have it up as well too. So I'm going to give you an invitation to come back sometime next year if you want, and let us know how you're doing some of these projects that you've got in the works. Maybe give us an update. That'd be great. I would be glad to. I had a blast. Awesome. Well, don't go away. I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air. Everyone, have a safe weekend out there. Please adhere to some of the things people are suggesting to social distancing and all that good stuff. Just please be safe. And the more you do your part, the more we get back to these shows and filming. People want, when are you going to do the show? When are you going to do the show? Well, we have to wait till it's safe. But anyways, we'll see you next week. And until next time, cheers.
Thanks again for tuning into Inside the Gilliverse with Eric Broadbent. Be sure to check back each week for more great discussions and interviews with cast and crew from Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.